I'm very comfortable in the studio in the likes of a Brando, a De Niro, or a Pacino, but throw me on the streets with a point-and-shoot camera even, which is what I began with on this project, and I'm a nervous wreck. I had a very hard time putting a camera up in somebody's face that I was unfamiliar with in an unfamiliar setting and situation. You know, I'm used to shooting still lifes. They walk into the studio, they get their hair and makeup done, they sit down, they don't move, I take the pictures, but it's a preconceived, preordained idea, whereas this is all very fresh. So this was like me taking a workshop in some ways, because it was all new, uncharted territory. One of the places that I loved very much in Southeast Asia was India, just for the dichotomy of people, for the locations, for the color of the light and situations and places and all. Like just basically day-to-day life. It was not at all what I expected. I found, you know, the people were very friendly and very open. Most of what I was interested in shooting was the darker side. You know, I don't think it was a negative, but I just found, for me, I shoot so much glamour and beauty in real life. For me to go over there and have the opportunity to shoot something that's just 180 degrees from what I'm used to was more of a challenge and more interesting for me. All my books and my signature work had been done in black and white, all my personal work. So I felt very obligated to take these pictures and convert them to black and white. It meant being able to see the contrast, the subtle nuances, the relationship between shadow and light, which is part of the signatures of my work. Black and white kind of strips everything bare, and it really makes you become more aware of what you're looking at. It less is masqueraded in the nuances of subtle colors, but black and white for me is so much more confrontational. It gives you much less to get lost in. You kind of have to focus on the moment, and that for me is always what photography, especially black and white photography, has been about. When I shot on this trip, I realized that you had to shoot immediately for several reasons. One, if you didn't shoot immediately, the context of the picture, or the picture within a picture, let's say, was lost, because the people are very generous in terms of their openness and friendliness, and you lose that real decisive moment because they start to smile, it becomes a snapshot. And we shot every day. Whenever we had the time to make pictures, we would go out and hit the ground running. There was no rehearsals, there was no, let's research these locations. Have you been to Tulsi Pipe Road? It's really an amazing location. It's a crazy mix of people. Nope, never been there, but let's go check it out. And we hit the ground running. The first thing, young boy, 13-year-old boy comes up to me, wants to be my guide. Takes me 2 seconds later, there's a guy dead laying there on the sidewalk, you know, an old man. So it's shocking from every aspect. When I was in Delhi, and I was with Steve McCurry's driver, we were driving around and he said, "Are you interested in shooting some eunuchs?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And we found these 4 eunuchs. I love the photograph of the 4 women that are men, obviously. And they don't look like men. They're so unattractive, even as women, but they just look like housefrows, you know. They're really bizarre. And they played and worked the camera. We paid them a little money, but then we just kind of let them unfold in front of the camera. It was kind of great because they didn't do straightforward posing, but you know, capturing the moment within the interaction was really kind of where the pictures were. And I found that true in shooting a lot of the eunuchs in Mumbai and Delhi. And not too much problem. I mean, they were intense people. And you know, I think that the majority of the people over there were not so against photography, they just didn't want to feel like they were being exploited. When I shot the blind person, I did let him know that I was photographing him, because I felt certainly he was more aware that I was there than I was aware of him. I mean, with that sixth sense. So I did make a statement that I'm photographing you. I gave him some money when I finished. He was totally fine with that. I didn't really ask him to do anything because I didn't really want him to perform for me, but I did make him aware of the fact that I was photographing him. I felt that was just my duty as a photographer, rather than to kind of steal his soul, so to speak. I got a call from Didier Mallet, who produced the book 9 Days in the Kingdom, where he brought together 50 of the world's great photographers to capture the essence for the King's 50th anniversary in Thailand. And I thought, well, I wonder what they're going to want a Hollywood celebrity photographer to do for them in Thailand. And this is where the boxing thing, they said, "We'd like you to shoot Muay Thai." You know, the first night I'm kind of figuring out, what is my ISO, what should it be, how do I want to approach this? I don't want any flash, I don't want any fill, I want a little bit of movement, but just enough movement to create that impending danger, but still capture the essence of the moment. And we captured, you know, several different aspects of the slum camps, the actual fights at Rajmandan and Lumpini stadiums, and also following some of the boxers in their post-careers as trainers or as camps. We actually worked with Nong Toom, who is the subject of the movie Beautiful Boxer, and she opened her own camp for expatriates in Pattaya, which was an extraordinary place to shoot. You really learn to observe light in these situations because you'll go to a location and there's absolutely no light. It's just, the light is, obviously there's always light, but the light is flat, and that's not what I'm known for. So I'm looking at the light and I realize, you know, I've got to come back here at about 5 o'clock so that the light is low enough underneath the Klong Toy freeway if we're shooting in a slum camp, or it's down low enough in some of the other boxing camps to where you actually have a ratio of your highlights to your shadows. Working in the realm of natural light definitely is more liberating in the sense that you're carrying a lot less crap with you. I travel simply, I shoot very simply. I'm not one of these photographers that needs a gazillion lenses and a ton of gear to make a picture. I never have been. It's always been very simple. If you look at my work, it's very simple. My work is usually a single subject with a single dark background, a single point light source. So for me, it wasn't hard working without the extra accoutrements that you might get in a studio or in another situation, but it was profoundly liberating in the sense that I had to really recognize where the light was to capture enough of the soul of the portrait, in essence, but there was light in the person's eyes and not always dark. Sometimes the dark was good. It presented that kind of ominous moment. I think one of the most important things that I value about my Midwest upbringing is the sense of humility. And I think when you come to shoot big celebrities, which at the beginning was unnerving. And very early in my career, I got under my belt stars like Barbra Streisand, David Bowie, Bette Midler, Dustin Hoffman from Tootsie. I realized they were just like everybody else. You know, they got to go to the bathroom. They're no more important than the plumber that comes to fix your toilet. You tell me, would you rather meet Barbra Streisand or have a plumber when you're in need? So I think dealing with them on a personal level, involving them very much in the shoot, I think that's crucial. That's something I teach in my workshops. Get them involved in the shoot, share your vision with them. It works really well. A lot of times you hear stories about celebrities being very difficult and problematic. And in the majority of the cases, if they're big stars, they aren't generally problematic or difficult. They're very discerning and very concerned about how everything should look and how it should be done. They're just perfectionists. The young kids today, they're the ones that are the pain in the ass. They make one movie and they think their shit doesn't stink. And they're the ones that give you problems with no backing and no foundation. The big stars generally know what's going on. They have an awareness. If you come into it and you're intimidated and you're insecure and you go, well, what do you think? They'll eat you alive. But if you come in there with a point of view, with the foundation, and you present your case, you know, it works great. I had that exact situation with Pacino on Scarface. I did 5 weeks with Al on Scarface. And the publicist on the movie said, put on long lenses, you'll probably get thrown off the set, da-da-da-da-da. Al and I had a great relationship to this day. I've always been more interested in terms of photography, not in who they are, what they've done, but who they are inside themselves, getting into the essence of the person behind the portrayal you see on the big screen. I like to kind of strip that all bare. And that's the most difficult part, basically, about what I do for a living is people don't understand when you've got someone like Dustin Hoffman in front of your lens and he's quite comfortable playing the character of Dorothy Michaels, you know, or Michael Dorsey in the movie Tootsie, but all of a sudden, boom, that's gone, and now here's Dustin Hoffman. Who am I supposed to be in front of the camera? It's a different ballgame. And so it's very challenging sometimes to find the real person behind this alter ego that you're familiar with seeing on the big screen. I like to think that I can assess and judge a person pretty much from the get-go. Spending my life behind a lens, looking at a person up close, I can kind of assess whether they're giving me the bullshit or whether they give me the real deal. I mean, not without naming names, I mean, I've had so many stars that have come in and they've been, and big names, been super nice to everybody, but there's nobody there, it's an act. I would say in terms of art history and my work, it would be most apparent in my male and female sculptural nudes. So I would say, you know, Roman and Greek mythology and that period. In terms of my personal work, absolutely. If you look at like the nudes I've done of Tony Ward or portraits of the nudes I did, early nudes I did of Bridget Nielsen, where I'm really doing the interplay of highlights and shadows. And if you look at the body of work too, I mean, you know, all of the photographers that kind of all of us that worked at that same period, we all had, our models become part of our icons and part of our look. If you look at Bruce Weber's work, larger, more masculine guys. Herb is somewhere between Bruce and myself, and I'm a more lean, sinewy dancer type. So those models also kind of travel with us in terms of part of our repertoire and part of our image. And so, you know, and I think that becomes part of the look of an artist, of the people that you shoot. I don't know why I really chose the nude in the beginning. I think probably because I built this daylight wall that's right behind us here in the studio. And I was playing with the interplay of light and shadow, and what better way to do it than on a human form. I've never been good at shooting anything that couldn't talk back to me, so it's always been about the human element in my imagery. I was a late one to digital, but once I came on board, I realized it was something to not fear, but to embrace, and to recognize the fact that we're living at a time where we're seeing the face of photography, traditional photography, change. But if you go back in history to the daguerreotypes, the tin types, the glass plate negatives, amber types, it's an exciting time, and what you're capable of doing today is amazing. I think the biggest issue is not overusing Photoshop and being true to the image. I think there's too much bullshit out there today that's being considered as fine art that's basically created in Photoshop, not photography. Oftentimes I get asked, so what advice would you give to young photographers today? And I usually say, find another job, because everybody's a photographer today. They all own cell phones. Most of them have Photoshop to work with, and they get some great images, and it's really about the image, it's not about the technical aspects. You can teach the technicalities of photography, but you can't give someone an eye. One of the things that I preach in teaching my workshops is to tell people, show people how to try to see and understand and interpret light, and how to basically be able to communicate with the talent in front of the lens. So many people, they'll get a great shot, but they'd be hard-pressed to duplicate it again if they were asked, well, I love that picture, could you do a portrait of me like that? So I think a lot of the luck with selfies and cell phones and all this stuff is just happenstance. They happen to be at the right place at the right time, the light's perfect, and they get a great picture.